Hello, this is a very special edition of the Barra Spoken Word in Clonakilty, now on Zoom. And our very special guest is Maria Gillen from Ireland, from Cork, the Cork city. And she's going to tell one of her medicinal stories. And Maria, you are very welcome and you have the floor. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Mose, for inviting me. And I'll just tell you the story. In the 1800s in Ireland, there were many families with bloodlines that went all the way back to the High Kings of Ireland. But now the country was going through an Gorta Mór, the Great Famine, and it was biting at the shoulder of the spirit of Ireland. And many families had to make hard decisions. One such family that lived in Kerry was the Clan O'Brien. The head of the family decided that in order for the family to survive, that the healthy branch must leave these shores, leave the country of Ireland, and head across the water in hopes of something new, some better life. So they made their way from Kerry all the way to Cork City and then onwards to Cove. And the big ship was waiting there, bobbing on the waves, later to become known as the coffin ships of Ireland. The family were saying goodbye to one another on the shore, and it broke Mr. O'Brien's heart. He found that he couldn't stay there any longer, so he made his way to the top of the headland of Cove, and there he could overlook his family saying goodbye to one another, kissing one another, having the mini wake, because chances were they would never see one another again. And as he watched this historic view unfold, something began to rage in his stomach, to roll up northwards towards his throat, and finally to fall out of his mouth. As this happened, it seemed that nature itself began to mirror how sad and how rageful he was. And the wind began to rise up over the Atlantic Ocean. Not to drown out his last words, you understand, but to receive them. And so he called into the wind, "Tá Gorta Mór orm, Tá ochras an dawan orm, agus Medina, mar óig siad me, Tor cowardom. His words fell into the wind, and the wind followed the ship across the Atlantic Ocean, following the beating hearts of his children. When it reached the land of America, it found a forest of aspen trees, and the wind played high above the ground in the branches there. And underneath, looking into his fire, was Grandfather Choctaw, looking deep into the flames and listening to the wind singing her song. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. Tá ochras an dawan, oring anish, Tor cower doing. Hey-ya, 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 yeah, hey-ya, hey-ya, ho. Hey-ya, 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 ho. Father Choctaw listened to the wind, listened to these beautiful foreign words. What did they mean? He decided that he would take them to bed with him, to sleep on it, to meet the ancestors in the liminal space, in the land of dreams, where the living can meet the ancestors. And there, when the mist cleared in his dreams, he saw the sunken cheeks of Mr. O'Brien and the hollow-eyed eyes. And to his own ear, he could now hear the words of his people. Help us. We're starving. We're hungry in our souls. We're hungry in our hearts. We're hungry in our bellies. But most of all, we hunger for hope. We will lose the elegance of spirit that our ancestors sent us if you don't help us. Help us. And he went deeper into the land of sleep until the mists cleared and he came back into the living land. He called his people around him, his people who had struck their camp, for they were now on the trail of tears. As he gathered his people, he noticed that one of the grandmothers was pushed into the earth by the man on the horse. When his people gathered, he told them of his dream, and he said, we need to give these people help. They said, Grandfather, are you mad? That man on the horse that kicked grandmother, he's from a place in Ireland called Cork. And that guy, he's from Antrim. He scared our children into pure silence, and you want us to help them? Grandfather Choctaw went to each individual person in his tribe and looked into their eyes. We have inherited an elegance of spirit from the ancestors, he said. It is up to us whether we carry on with that elegance or not. If you treat these people the same way that they treat you, are you any different? I will let you to think on that. And as the people moved along the trail of tears, they thought on Grandfather's Choctaw's words, and they thought they did not want to be like these people. So they gathered their belongings together, and they gathered $176, a princely sum in the 1800s. With this money, they were able to hire a big ship and fill it with corn and send it across the ocean to Cove, to the place where the cries of Mr. O'Brien had gone into the winds and across the sea and up into the branches of the aspen tree. That corn became known as Indian wheat in Ireland and still waves in the fields of Era. We never forgot. In the year 2020, the Hopi Nation and the Navajo Nation came together to ask for help. They asked through the internet. Our elders are stuck together in small houses. They can't self-isolate in this COVID time. Water is beginning to become scarce, and food. There is 4 shops for a territory as big as Ireland. The first little love note came in from Era. Here is $10 because we never forgot. You are our kindred spirits, it said. What's this? Said the Indian nation. And then another email came in, and then another, and soon a trickle became a river, became a sea of love notes. Ireland, saying to their Indian brothers, we are on Clan Céanna, the same tribe, kindred spirits.
Thank you so much, Maria. Wow. That's a very beautiful story, very beautiful told by a beautiful teller as well.
Oh, thank you.
Could you tell me how I mean, it's at what moment did you decide to tell this story in this way?
When the call went out from the Hopi and the Navajo Nation,
yeah,
I was very touched by it, and I made my own little donation. And then I was going out walking in COVID like everybody was doing, you know, you're 1 hour in the day during lockdown and you're with your own thoughts. And it's almost like your own little spiritual walk. And this dream story came to me, you know, and I was very taken with the story that arrived into my internal projector. And I was talking about it on a forum. And actually, it touched the heart of a singer-songwriter, Colin Irwin. So while I was receiving this story from the Irish side of the fence, he was writing a song from the Choctaw side of the fence, you know. So it just feels that it's a very strong tie to the past. And of course, this doesn't come from the head. It's a heart tie.
Yeah. But it's also, there are two true stories.
Yes.
Choctaw story is true.
The facts are true in that story.
Yeah. It's one of your medicinal stories. Could you say a bit more about medicinal stories?
Yeah, so a medicinal story is a story. I'm a drama therapist, so I have an MA in drama therapy, and we learned techniques to mine, you know, kind of the unsayable. So zeitgeist, you know, the zeitgeist of, you know, what has happened. Another development for the Indian nation is the Iroquois. So we have hurling in this country and it's our national sport and we're very tied to it. And the Iroquois nation came up with hockey, you know. So the Irish hockey team got a golden ticket to be able to play in the next Olympics. But the Iroquois nation were not recognized and therefore couldn't compete and couldn't take their place. So even though this is so meaningful to, you know, to Ireland to have punched above their weight one more time in sport, they've decided not to take up the offer and to stand with the Iroquois.
Wow.
You know? So it's amazing that these connections that we have, but for a long time, they're like unsayable connections or, you know, they're not talked about. So how do you make the unsayable touchable? And it's through stories, you know, and our history. So the medicinal side of stories is a lot of times it's based in catharsis. So over 2020 years ago, in the cradle of humanity, the Greeks came up with this concept of catharsis. And catharsis was, you could have had a rotten day, really horrible, and you come home feeling a lot of weight and, you know, not able to smile or even have chats with your family. But then you see a play or hear a piece of music or in modern times, watch something on TV or in the cinema, and you feel better. Now, in logical fact, nothing has changed. But inside the person, everything that is very important has changed. And you've become lighter in your spirit. And that's the core of the medicinal story.
Yeah.
Is, you know, and it doesn't mean to make you feel happy, you know, it means to lighten the load.
Yeah.
You know? Sometimes that might mean facing a hard truth. And sometimes it might mean putting down the burden for a minute and having a laugh, you know, so.
Or sometimes it might mean realizing that people can do a lot of good for each other as well.
Yeah, you know, and realizing the wisdoms of, you know, kind of people who've gone before, because we know ourselves, we're not born knowing everything, but we gain a certain amount of wisdom along our journey. And how do you hand that on? And how can that be received?
Yeah.
You know? So instead, in a non-ego way, the best way is through song, story, music, you know, that's how you hand these wisdoms on.
Thank you. Can you, the last question is, you have a beautiful amulet around, or around your neck. Could you tell me a bit more about it?
Yeah. So this is my much prized amulet and I made it myself, you know. So the stone is labradorite, which is the storyteller's stone.
Is
And
it?
we have labradorite that it holds, you can see there how it changes color in different lights, you know. And they say of labradorite that there's big deposits of it to be found in Labrador,
Okay.
where the aurora borealis has kissed the ground. And the property of this stone is supposed to be the red thread of story. So, you know, as a medicinal teller, sometimes people will say to me, what stories are you going to tell tonight? And I'll say, I don't know. I have to be in contact with my audience first, because you need to feel the red thread of the story. And sometimes you can tell a story to an audience of 30 people, and 30 different versions of that story will go away, you know, and people will cling to the bit that was meaningful to them, you know. So yeah, so I love those properties of story, and it's mirrored in my amulet. And a big shout out to St. John's College. Mwah, I love you so much. And to my tutors, Sam and Chris, who have amazing patience, you know. And Chris himself is actually a third generation jeweler with loads of history about Cork jewellery, including Rebel Silver. So that's a story for another day, the Rebel Silver story and how it came about. But if you want to find out, then go to Chris Carroll of Carroll Jewelers, because he is the custodian of that story and that history, and has the paperwork that goes with it, you know. So we'll have to get Chris on someday to tell that story.
Yeah. He's a storyteller as well?
Not really. He keeps saying, Maria, I'm not a storyteller. But to me, he's the only person that can tell this particular story,
Okay. Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
I know I
And
said
I suppose,
yeah,
one little medicinal story about Chris, you know, is that a gentleman came in one time with a wedding ring, and it was squashed out of all recognition because he'd driven over it, and it was his father's wedding ring. And he said, look, there's a bump in the ring and it's just there. And I really want that to stay there because that was me. I bit it when I was a child, you know, but I want the rest of the ring to be made round. So Chris told him to sit down, and he took out his last right in front of the gentleman, you know, and he put the round back into the ring so that it was a perfect ring, but left the meaningful dent, you know, that was the connection between father and son.
wow.
I was thinking how many jewelers, you know, could do that, or would even have the emotional insight to do that. So Cork, you know, kind of Chris is a Cork jeweler, third generation. If you want to buy meaningful jewelry and have it looked after for your lifetime and the lifetime of those that come after, go to your local jeweler. You won't get anyone better. Chris Carroll, Carroll Jeweler.
Okay, thank you. And on that lovely advert, we will
Yeah.
close this session. Thank you very much, Maria, and hope to
Very welcome.
we'll see you again on the 8th. Yeah.
Well, of course, yeah. I love coming to virtual Clan and
Yes.
this gorgeous club, yeah.
And hopefully there once in the future we will have an actual session again, actual club. Okay, thank you very much.